Good morning, students. Once again, this is your science teacher, Mr. James. Are you ready for another lesson? Great. Okay, let's start. Before we start, I want you to get the following materials. First, your science textbook, your science workbook, your pen, and your earphone. Okay, so let's start. Before we start with our main lesson, let's have a quick revision about our previous lesson. Do you still remember the title of our previous lesson? Great, air masses. What are the major air masses? How air masses move? And what are the main types of fronts? What are the major air masses?
An air mass is a huge body of air, so large that it often stretches for several thousand miles. Air masses generally have similar temperature and moisture properties throughout. The geographical location from which an air mass originates is its source. The types of air masses formed on Earth are determined by their source region. Air masses can have one of four qualities: continental, maritime, tropical, or polar. Continental air masses occur over large land masses and usually contain less moisture than other air masses, meaning they tend to be dry. Maritime air masses originate over a large body of water and are also known as oceanic air masses. Because they form over water, they are moist. Tropical air masses form in regions of lower latitudes and are usually warm. Polar air masses form over polar ice caps and are very cold. As these air masses move across Earth's surface, they will change, becoming modified according to the characteristics of the location beneath them. For example, an Arctic air mass with very cold and dry air moving across the ocean will become warm and moist, changing over to a moist maritime polar air mass. When this polar air mass moves south from Canada into the southern United States, it will acquire warmth from the ground below and become drier due to a lack of moisture. This air mass has now become a continental polar air mass. When air masses stay long over a region, they control the weather of those regions.
How air masses move? Air masses move by prevailing westerlies, jet streams, and fronts. What are the main types of fronts? So when we say fronts, these are boundaries between two air masses. Colliding air masses can form four types of fronts. So we have cold fronts, warm fronts, stationary fronts, and occluded fronts.
The boundaries between these two air masses are referred to as fronts. Fronts are labeled in reference to the relative temperature of the air that is approaching and replacing the existing air mass. There are four types of fronts: warm fronts, cold fronts, stationary fronts, and occluded fronts. A warm front occurs when a warm air mass overtakes an air mass of a colder temperature. Warm fronts usually move slowly, around 10 to 25 miles per hour, and have a gradual slope that will slide over the top of a cooler air mass and move it out of the area. Warm fronts usually contain high humidity and have more stratiform or layered clouds along the frontal boundary. Drizzle and decreasing visibility will be present as temperatures rise. Once the front passes, rain showers are possible, followed by a gradual clearing. A cold front occurs when cold, dense air overtakes warmer air. Cold fronts move faster than warm fronts, averaging 25 to 30 miles per hour, but can go as fast as 60 miles per hour. Cold fronts stay close to the ground and have a steeper angle than a warm front. They will move across the ground and lift existing air at a very rapid rate. This rapid upward motion will cool the air and form cumulus clouds, which could eventually develop into thunderstorms or even form a line of thunderstorms called a squall line. Once the front passes, the weather will clear and improve with general wind flow from the west-northwest. A stationary front occurs when two air masses meet, but neither one moves the other out of the way. Stationary fronts can have a combination of weather from both a warm and cold front. These fronts can oscillate, but will generally linger around for several days before one of the air masses pushes the other air mass out of the way. The last type of front is called an occluded front. Occluded fronts form when a fast-moving cold front catches up to a slower-moving warm front. Cold front will then lift up the warm front and eventually interact with the air that is in front of the warm front. This stacking of fronts can give rise to a variety of weather conditions, from fog to thunderstorms.
Let's proceed to our main lesson. So we will start with Lesson 1, the sky from the earth. So can you please open your book on page 475? Okay, great. Objectives. After this lesson, the students will gather and synthesize information in order to identify objects and constellations visible without a telescope in the night sky. Students will develop and use a model to describe the apparent motions of stars and planets throughout the year. Vocabulary words. After this lesson, the students will be familiarized with the following words: satellite, comet, planet, star, meteor, and constellation. What can you see in the night sky? Depending on how dark the sky is where you are, you might see 2,000 or 3,000 stars using just your eyes. On a clear night, you may see moon, planets, meteors and comets, and stars. Moon. About half of every month, Earth's moon outshines everything else in the night sky. The moon is Earth's only natural satellite. When we say natural satellite, it's any celestial body in space that orbits around a larger body. Moons are called natural satellite because they orbit planets. So remember, a satellite is a body that orbits a planet. Planets is an object that orbits the Sun, is large enough to have become rounded by its own gravity, and has cleared the area of its orbit. There are 8 planets in our solar system. 5 are visible from Earth without a telescope. These 5 planets are Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Here are the 5 planets: Mercury, Venus, Saturn, Mars, Jupiter. Meteors and comets. A meteor is a streak of light produced when a small object burns up entering Earth's atmosphere, just like in the picture. Next, a comet is a cold mixture of dust and ice that gives off a long trail of light as it approaches the Sun. So this is an example of comet. Okay, so next. Stars. It's a giant ball of hot gas mainly composed of hydrogen and helium. As seen from Earth, the positions of stars relative to each other do not seem to change. Before we proceed to the next page, let's answer first the following questions. First, what objects might you be able to see with your bare eyes? Okay, first, stars. Next, the moon. planets. We have Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Meteors and comets. Okay, good. Which of these objects are you most likely to see? Okay, if your answers are stars and the moon, congratulations, you're correct. Okay, next question. What type of object is Earth? I'll give you 5 seconds to answer this question. Okay, time's up. The correct answer is Earth is a planet. Okay, very good for those who answered planet. Open your book on page 476, Constellations. A constellation is a pattern or group of stars that people imagine to represent a figure, animal, or object. This is an example of a figure that we called Ursa Major, or a bear. Astronomers also use the word constellation for an area of the sky and all the objects in that area. Different cultures have identified different constellations. Western culture, there are 88 constellations. Most constellations names used today come from the ancient Greeks, who probably took them from the Egyptians and Mesopotamians. Some constellations names comes from Latin. The constellation Leo is named from the Latin word meaning lion. Finding constellations. A star chart can help you find constellations in the night sky. You probably recognize the Big Dipper. This group of stars is actually not a constellation itself. It is part of constellations Ursa Major or Great Bear. The two stars at the end of the Dipper's bowl are called pointers. If you continue it away from the bowl, the first very bright star you'll reach is called Polaris. Polaris is commonly called the North Star. It is located close to the sky's north pole. Before we proceed to our next topic, let's answer the following questions. Where do constellations names come from? I'll give you 5 seconds to answer this question. Okay, time's up. From the ancient Greeks, many of the constellations are named after characters from Greek myth. If your answer is the same as this, congratulations, you're correct. Next question. What other group gave constellations many names that we use today? I'll give you 5 seconds to answer this question. Okay, time's up. The ancient Romans, who gave constellations Latin names such as Leo. Okay? How do objects in the sky appear to move? Stars, planets, and other objects appear to move over time. They do move in space, but those actual motion and their apparent or visible motion may be different. The apparent motion of objects in the sky depends on the motion of Earth. So when we say apparent motion is the appearance of real motion from a sequence of still images. Apparent motion occurs whenever stimuli separated by time and location are actually perceived as a single stimulus moving from one location to another. Star motions. Stars generally appear to move from east to west through the night. This apparent motion is actually caused by Earth turning from west to east. The Sun's apparent motion during the day is also caused by Earth's motion. Seasonal changes. Constellations and star patterns remain the same year after year, but which one you can see varies from season to season. For example, you can find Orion in the eastern sky on winter evenings, but by spring you will see Orion in the west disappearing below the horizon shortly after sunset. These seasonal changes are caused by Earth's orbit around the Sun. Each night, the position of most stars shifts slightly to the west. There are few constellations that you can see all year long. There are 5 northern constellations visible from most locations north of the equator throughout the year. These are Cassiopeia, Cepheus, Draco, Ursa Major or the Great Bear, and Ursa Minor. Planets. Planets appear to move against the background of stars because the planets all orbit the Sun in about the same plane. They appear to move through a narrow band in the sky. This band is called Zodiac. It includes constellations such as Taurus, Leo, and Virgo. You can see Venus and Mercury only in the evening or morning. They are closer to the Sun than Earth, and so they always appear close to the Sun. Venus is the brightest object in the night sky other than the Moon. Mercury appears low in the sky and it is visible for a limited time, around sunrise or sunset. Before we proceed to our summary, let's answer the following questions. First, why do stars appear to move from east to west throughout the night? I'll give you 5 seconds to answer this question. Okay, time's up. The answer is because Earth rotates on its axis from west to east. Did you get the correct answer? Great. Next question. What is the apparent motion of the Sun during the day? Don't forget, when we say apparent motion is the appearance of real motion from a sequence of still images. Apparent motion occurs whenever stimuli separated by time and location are actually perceived as a single stimulus moving from one location to another. Okay, I'll give you 5 seconds to answer this question. Time's up. The correct answer is the Sun also seems to move from east to west. Did you get the correct answer? Great. Summary. What can you see in the night sky? On a clear night, you can see Moon, planets, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, Mars, and Jupiter, meteors and comets, and stars.
Constellations. A majority of the stars in the sky appear to be grouped together, forming interesting patterns. These patterns resemble a variety of objects on Earth, such as animals and human beings. The groups of stars in the sky forming recognizable patterns and shapes are called constellations. There are 88 known constellations in the universe. The prominent constellations are Ursa Major or Great Bear, Ursa Minor or Little Bear, Taurus or Bull, Orion or Hunter, Scorpio.
Thank you for watching and listening in our video. I hope you enjoy and you learn something from this video. Thank you.